Hi, I'm Tawnya Bhattacharya, and you're watching the TV Writer Podcast.
Hosted by Gray Jones, the TV Writer Podcast is brought to you by Script Magazine and ScriptMag.com, the leading source for script writing information in print and on the web. This is Gray, and I'm here with Tawnya Bhattacharya. How are you doing, Tawnya?
I'm good. Thank you so much. And thanks for having me here.
You're very welcome. This is actually podcast 78 for early June, and I think people are going to really get a lot out of this. You are a working screen and TV writer, and you've got a lot of experience not only working, but also teaching and consulting, and I'm sure that you can have some insight that people will benefit from.
I hope so.
Cool. Well, why don't we first talk a little bit about your backstory and go back to when you decided you wanted to be a writer in the first place. Tell me about that.
Okay. I actually went to an acting conservatory in Seattle, Washington called Cornish College of the Arts. So I was studying acting there. And then there was a playwriting program as well. It was pretty experimental at the time. It was new. I think they'd done it only 1 year before. And I kind of got recruited to do that. So I started writing then, really, and had to write, produce, and be in my own senior project, as well as do several little smaller projects throughout my last 2 years of school there. So that's where I kind of started it. And then I had written a little bit here and there, just sort of casually, tried to write a short film. I lived in Vienna, Austria for 2 years.
Wow.
Random. I kind of did that. I went there and did some theater there, and I wrote a short film while I was there and some little short stories. And then when I moved to LA to pursue acting, I was in really bad, crappy B-, D, F maybe, movies that were just really embarrassing and horrible. And of course, the writing was really bad, to the point where you have that sort of arrogant, I can do this, I can do a better job than this. And then I had that sort of naive, I'm going to write something for myself to perform in, because, we had all heard of the Rocky, the Sylvester Stallone story. And so I went to Writers Boot Camp. And I did 22 months there. And then while I was there, I took every other class under the sun. I did Robert McKee's story classes and all of his genre classes. I did one called Naked Screenwriting with William Martell, but it wasn't naked, fortunately. So I don't think that would be very fun. Yeah. And then I did Save the Cat. And I actually studied with Blake, God rest his soul, like one of the last classes that he taught. So I was really going for it. And then I realized that I didn't miss acting and that's not what I wanted to do, that this was actually more fulfilling. And so I just sort of fully committed to it and started while I was at boot camp. I got my first couple of options there and a couple of writing assignments working with sort of indie directors, but it was really great training ground because I had to write and rewrite according to, in one case, the producer's sort of vision and specifications, and then the other one, a director it was his idea that I was writing. And so it was interesting, to try to execute somebody else's vision for them. And that's sort of where it all began. I started out with features.
And with features, a lot of people don't realize that most of the work that happens is rewriting.
Yes. And the development. I mean, I'm so big on the development. I'm really, I've become sort of militant and crazy about it because I believe that you can do a lot of the rewriting within the development process if you're really thinking about all of that. And you're sort of doing the work up front and maybe work in the outline. And then when you go to script, hopefully you can have a first draft that's much stronger than a first draft so that when you get into the draft, because one thing that isn't fun is the rewriting a billion times, especially if you have to just take out huge chunks and throw it away because it's off in the first place structurally. So I always try to do the rewriting within the development work myself.
And in particular with features, a lot of the work is assignments. When you get a writing assignment, how much are you in control of that development process?
Well, I've only had the very indie writing assignments in features at this point. I hopefully down the road will be one of the top 10 guys out there, and I'll be the gal. But I didn't, in my experience, have a lot of control, even when it was my own idea. That was a little more collaborative. And I think both experiences that I had, like while I was at boot camp specifically, were really positive experiences. But in the one, the producer was experienced and wanted to see certain things out of it. And sometimes we would disagree, especially about there's a smaller sort of B story within there that I feel like I rewrote a billion times and circled back to the same one that I originally started with. And then, and so that was collaborative. But with the assignment, it was really everything was tailored toward what the director and the producers that were attached at the time wanted out of that project. And so it was difficult, but you do find the creativity within that. And it's just within sort of certain parameters of like, okay, I can do this creative thing, but it has to sort of fit a little bit into this box of what they're asking me to do. But I mean, I don't know. I was pretty lucky to be able to have a voice and have a say, but not the final say.
Now, let's wind back a little bit. And you talked about going to a number of these different programs and that kind of thing. This is a mega huge industry. Conferences and seminars and consultants and all this sort of thing. What did you find most helpful to your early process?
Well, it's always kind of inspiring, it's always inspiring to be around other writers that are trying to do the same thing, and you meet them, and you know, it's nice if you can make some friends along the way. I think in the best of them, I was given more of a process so that I had some place to start with and maybe a middle and then to work towards an end. Then there's certain things, and I don't want to specify because I think they were all valuable. Like I learned something from every single class or workshop that I took, but some of them were more lecture, and you would go, yeah, that makes total sense. And that's brilliant and genius. And it's broken down, but there's no applicable process. So you'd go home inspired, but still not know what the hell you were doing. And so I'd be like, what? Okay. So you would start to sort of understand it in an intellectual way, but then not have any sort of applicable process. And so, boot camp gave me that. And in creating my own, as you mentioned, I do teach and consult. I created my own sort of set of tools to help people, develop their projects. It's sort of like based on my own process.
And you taught at boot camp for several years.
I did, yeah. I went to the 22-month program, and then the founder asked me if I wanted to teach, and I was like, "Really? Me? I don't never taught before. I don't know." He's like, "No, you can do it. You understand what we're doing here. You'll be great." And so I was like, "Okay, but not now, right? Maybe next year." And because it was like August or something, and he's like, "Yeah, in the new year." And then I went to London with my husband. I'm married to a British Indian. And so we went to London, and I got a phone call while I was in London saying, he actually needs you to teach sooner than that. And I'm like, how sooner? No. They're like, September 15th. Wow. I remember it was September 15th, 2005 was my first class that I taught, I think. Wow. Yeah. And I was like, that's the day I'm landing. I'll be pretty jet lagged. They're like, he'll help you teach the first class, and then you'll be fine from there. And I was like, they weren't taking no for an answer. Wow. So I taught the first class with the founder who, and I was jet lagged, and it was bizarre. And then that was it. I was just kind of thrown into the fire, and it was great. It's great. And I really love doing it, and I've done it ever since. And then, I started my own business after I actually moved to India for 2 years.
Wow. So you've had a lot of international experiences.
Yes.
Very, very cool. And so at what point did the writing start to pay the bills?
So it didn't start to pay the bills until I got onto Fairly Legal, which was the USA show Fairly Legal. I was on season 2 of that in 2011 and 12, I believe. And then Client List, obviously. But before that, it was all sort of breaking in. So it was like I did Fox Diversity Program and the NBC Writers on the Verge. And that was sort of my foray into the TV world. And that's when it was like, oh, I should have done this a lot sooner. Because the great thing about TV is that you can have something that you've written produced. And I mean, there's nothing like that. It's so rewarding.
Yeah. Now, I should mention you also did the Fox Writers Initiative, and you optioned an original pilot, which is very, very cool. Yeah. And at what point did you start writing with Ali, is it Laventhol?
Laventhol.
Laventhol?
Laventhol. Yeah, I write with a writing partner who's an amazing and brilliant talent and a wonderful human being. So I'm very fortunate to have found the one, my other husband. Or she's really my wife. I'm the husband. So she was a writer in the very first class I taught at Writers Boot Camp. Mm-hmm. And probably a couple years into teaching, we became friendly, and we had sort of talked about writing something together because she had a darker sort of thrillery project that is really more up my alley. Mm-hmm. And so we talked about it, but it never happened. And then I moved to India, and because my husband, British Indian, was asked to go and launch GQ there because magazines were booming. And so I went there and I was writing my material. I had the options then and everything on Skype. And I actually started working with a different friend. It wasn't intended to be like a lifelong partnership or anything. It was just a matter of, I would tell her stories about my crazy family and my background. And she said, you should write this. And so I said, I'll do it if you will do it with me, because I didn't have any time. And she kept kind of hounding me. And so that was the project, the first pilot I wrote that we wrote together, and it got us into the Fox diversity. Then I was so great. And I was like, yeah, this is awesome. I should be writing for TV. I had started writing a feature with Ali, because we had started working with the same producer on two separate feature projects. And we met for lunch one day. And after lunch, she was like, oh, wait, I almost forgot to ask you. Has Amy, and Amy was the producer we were working with. She was like, has Amy talked to you about, and I didn't even let her finish. I was like, what? She wants you to like partner up with me so I'll finish my project already. And she's like, no, but I was thinking. And I was like, yes, we should do it. And so it was kind of like just meant to happen. And we started writing one of our features. It was actually her feature that we started working on. And we did that partly in person because I was in town from India, and partly on Skype. And at that point I had moved back from India to the East Coast. That's a long story. And we submitted, we did that, and it was such a great project and process to write together on Skype, like back and forth, which is crazy. Like, you're submitting like the scene, and then the person's like reading it and talking it out and rewriting it and then sending it back, because we didn't even have our final draft synced up. Wow. And so it was such a really great process together. Like, it was that the magic was there. And so it was just the right combination. And we finished it. And then I was like, well, I need to write a spec. I need to get into one of these other programs because I need to, and she was like, I do too. And I was like, well, I'm going to do a Nurse Jackie. Do you want to do it with me? And she said, yes. And that was it. I mean, we did Nurse Jackie together, and we started writing, to answer your question, long story long, about 3 years ago, maybe. And then we did the Nurse Jackie, and that got us into Writers on the Verge. And then Writers on the Verge really sort of launched us into the business, really, because with the help of Jen Grisanti and Karen Horn, who sort of run that program, we were able to meet, a lot of executives there, obviously, because that's part of their program. And then we got our agent and manager out of that program. And then our first gig was in the NBC family. It was a USA show. And that was sort of like, I find in my experience so far that it takes a village. So it was sort of the help of like Jen and our manager and the manager who knew this person and the agent who knew that person. They all sort of put the call in or send out an email or pick up the phone, and then you go in the room and hopefully get the job. But it takes all that sort of support.
Very, very cool. Well, and I think it's good for everybody to hear that it's not just one seminar or one conference or one program that necessarily gets you there, but you built this all over a long period of time.
Yeah, it took a while. I mean, I feel like once I started doing TV, like that, everything started clicking in for me. So that kind of process was really fast, because I did Fox 2009, 2010, and then I did Writers on the Verge 2010, 2011. And then I did 211, 212, I guess, was Fairly Legal, and then Client List. So yeah, I mean, that part was, for me, I felt like quick. My writing partner Allie was doing TV before then. So for her, she feels like it took her more years. For me, like as far as starting with features, I think I must have started Writers Boot Camp in 2002 or 3. So it was a lot of like learning and figuring it out and a lot of training and then just throwing your hat into the ring. And I got really lucky with Writers on the Verge and Fox Diversity. I feel really fortunate to have like gotten into those two programs as quickly as I did, because I know a lot of people, they have to apply, many times, or they've been in many programs before they get their first job. And it doesn't mean they're not an amazing writer. It's just that it's a really difficult business to break into, even when you do have support.
Oh yeah. And those fellowship programs, I heard that the piles were a lot smaller a few years ago, and the piles of people applying is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Somebody said it was a number like 1,600 people submitted to the Writers on the Verge last year.
It's 1,200 the year that we did it. So I feel like it goes up by like at least 300-400 every year, because people have more of an awareness about it. Like I had never heard about it before. And then I was like, wait, what's this? What are these programs everybody's applying for? And I don't remember who even told me about them, but fortunately I learned about them, because I think it's one of the ways that if you can get in, it can be really helpful in sort of launching you, kickstarting your career. But I mean, there are really talented people that don't get in because there's so many scripts, and then it's subjective. And so somebody, I don't know how many readers they all have. I think a lot of them have at least 2 sort of rounds at least. And so you may have somebody who gets the show and knows it and loves it and says, yeah, this is an amazing script. And then somebody else who doesn't. And so it's like, then you've got that score that's a combo, and and it's not always about the most talented, people. I mean, I think there are probably a lot of people that were much more talented than we are, and they didn't get in, but if you keep at it and you want it badly enough and you pursue it at every angle that you can, eventually I think that the cream will rise to the top.
Very, very cool. So let's just touch briefly on your experience on Client List and Fairly Legal. In the room for the first time, what was your experience? What did you learn? Take-homes that you could help other people with who might be in that position?
I feel like Allie and I really lucked out by having the opportunity to be in 2 rooms that were really healthy and wonderful experiences. I mean, obviously, writing for TV can be difficult and stressful, but it's only going to be made more difficult and stressful if the room is unhealthy. And I've been lucky not to have to deal with that. So I've had 2 showrunners that are like really cool people that I really like as human beings, and that are very supportive. And I think when someone's supportive and sort of praises you and tells you when work is good, but is also honest and, hey, we need to change this or whatever, then you're going to do your best work. And so on Fairly Legal, we broke story differently than the Client List. It was sort of, I remember going into the room for the first time and being petrified. I honestly, Allie and I would go into the bathroom. I don't think we've ever told the showrunner this. I will have to tell him at some point. And I'd be like, we're going to get fired. We're going to get fired. Because you would just constantly screwing yourself of, am I talking enough? Am I not talking enough? Do I need to pitch more? And it's intimidating because it was a big room. I feel like there was at least 9 writers, and then there was also, and there was like a lot of upper level, a lot of mid level, like a real balance. And you just felt like there were 3 staff writers, 4 really, but Allie and I are one person. So there's 4 staff writers, and so you're sort of comparing yourself to them. It's hard not to do that. I don't think the showrunner was doing that or anybody else was doing that, but we were doing that to ourselves and going like, okay, if I just say 3 things today, I'll be really proud of myself. And sometimes that's all it is. Sometimes it's like they don't necessarily, and every room's different, but they don't necessarily expect you to be contributing at the level that their co-EPs are, or their consulting producers or whatever. They expect you to contribute when you have something to say. And the table was really huge. I'm going random thoughts, but the table was really big, and we were at one end of it, and sometimes it felt like the showrunner was at the other end, and so you couldn't
hey, over there.
You didn't have the big, you didn't have the sort of commanding voice that would carry, and so you'd have to pipe up. I mean, sometimes we'd feel like we were yelling just to use your raising voice so you could be heard. But the pressure is all internal. I feel like it's just really about take deep breaths. I mean, one suggestion I would have would be like, do some yoga, get a treadmill, you know what I mean? And try to get some sleep and try to just take deep breaths and not worry so much, because it took like the first few months I was just worried about like taking the temperature of how I thought we were doing or how I was doing the whole time. And it turned out that we did fine. We did what we were expected to do and surpassed that. So I think that advice is just speak up when you have something to say. Don't contribute for the sake of contributing. Try to gauge the room, because you can tell. Like there were times when it was like, oh, the grown-ups are talking. Like that upper level people are figuring it out down there, and it's okay to just sit back and listen, because part of what you're doing is learning, trying to learn from the people that have more experience than you do, that have 15, 20 years on you or more. But and then, we felt much more confident going into the client list on so many levels, because it was also not a case. It was difficult to we were like, it was our first time breaking like a legal case. And so that was a new sort of skill that we were trying to develop on that show. And then the difference between breaking in the two rooms was the first couple of weeks of both of those rooms, it would be like everybody sort of just pitching ideas and putting them up on the board or putting them on big giant stickies, and just seeing what stuck, I guess. Yeah. And so everyone would pitch ideas of like what could happen for the season or what could happen within relationships. And obviously the showrunners had their own vision too of what would be happening. And so we would just talk about it a lot. And then, in Fairly Legal, we all broke story in the room together. So you could be spending a week or 2 weeks or more if there was a case that was particularly difficult that you had to re-break several times. We would all break it together as a big room, or then when people went off to write their scripts, the rooms would get smaller, but then somebody would come in, like maybe an upper level that was working on their script would come in and then hear what we had done for the day and help re-break or, start from scratch or whatever. And then on the client list, which I enjoy both ways of doing it. But on the client list, we would break our own stories and then put it on the board. So
interesting.
You would board your beats or whatever, and then you would pitch out your story and say, okay, so this is what happens, and this, and you would just go through the whole thing, and then the room could interject or comment or add something or be like, that act out's not really working. And then we'd sort of re-break or fix to whatever degree was necessary in the room together. And I really like that because it gives you your own sort of autonomy with the story. It's like you broke it. It's your little baby. And then you get help if you need it, to whatever degree you need it. And then you would go into outline.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was cool. It was great. I mean, both experiences were awesome. They're so different.
Very, very cool. Yeah, I've heard every room is different, and it does sound like those are pretty healthy. I've heard of some less healthy ones, which and they're all experiences, and even in the quote unquote less healthy rooms. They get great shows out, and there's a way they do it, and for some people, they can work within that and have a great time. So, a lot of it too is finding the people that you work well with over time, and trying to get jobs with those people.
Yeah, I mean, I every single person that I've worked with so far, I'd love to work with again on both shows. I think it was such a good experience, and I learned a lot from the people that I worked with, whatever level they were. And it's nice. I mean, because you might have somebody that's like on Fairly Legal, we had a staff writer who was phenomenal and amazing at breaking story. And, it was great to watch how she would do it. And hopefully we picked up something from her during our time. Yeah.
Very, very cool. And actually that leads to one question, which is your approach to networking. How much is this part of your career process?
I feel like that's something that I push other people to do that I don't do as well, on my own. I mean, Allie would say that I am good at it. I will do it. But right now I don't have time. So you're just like, there's not time to do that. I think as a writer starting out, it's really important to network. And so I always encourage writers that I work with, like, get into a writer's group, help each other. Success happens in circles. You guys should build your careers together and then like sort of ladder the next person up, just keep helping each other up. And so a lot of them do that. And then I'm like, you got to join Next Gen Femmes if you're a female, or Women in Film, or there's like the JHRTS. I think I'm saying that right. The Junior Hollywood Radio and Television Society. There's all kinds of things out there that I'm sure I'm not even aware of where you can meet other writers and try to network with them. And I also suggest, like, if you go to these panels that they have at the Guild, raise your hand, ask a smart question, go up to them afterward. They should remember that you asked the smart question, and then call your agent or manager if you have one and say, hey, I met so-and-so tonight. And then if they know them, which they often will, they'll get on the phone and be like, hey, you met my client, and if there's something happening, like, you should meet them on this, or you should just have a general with them. It's just about doing that and planting the seeds. I'm big on, now that I am repped, obviously, and working, I still tell our agent and manager that, like, we want to go out on as many meetings as possible to meet everybody we can in town, because it's about like planting the seeds and building those relationships. And when you don't have any relationships, when you're starting out, it's like, go out, be social. I mean, I guess two experiences that we had that I can remember are, my writing partner and I, we decided we were in Writers on the Verge. We didn't have hardly any connections. I mean, we're both girls who, I came from, not sticks, and I didn't have any connections in the business. And she didn't either. She grew up in San Diego, very differently, but neither one of us had a ton of contacts. We had a couple of people that we knew, but we worked those contacts. Like, she had a friend who knew another guy who was developing material and had sold a bunch of pilots. So like, we had him read our stuff. We met with him. We were about to develop with him. And then we got into Writers on the Verge and we didn't have the time. And we went to, when we were on Writers on the Verge, we went to the Austin Film Festival. And then we went to like one of those panels that has agents and managers. And my writing partner, Allie, was like, I really like that agent. She's really smart. She was a CAA agent. And I was like, okay, great. We need to go up and talk to her. And I was like, we do, you're right. So we went up and we talked to her afterward. We asked her a couple of questions. And then we'd had a feature that was at CAA at the time through the producer that we were working with. And so we'd already been there and had a meeting there. But we got our people to, track down a couple of TV agents there, including that agent who said, I remember those girls. They asked a smart question. They came up to me afterwards. It's so interesting that there were all these people in the audience and only a few of them came up and talked to me. And I remember those two. And of course we were able to say, we just did we're doing Writers on the Verge, and we wrote this, and I don't remember what our questions were, but she was our agent at CA for a while. And as well as another guy there. But that was like working, like making your own connections and contacts. And so we try to do that. And another time I was at Wolfgang's. I was at the bar at Wolfgang's, and this was during the Writers on the Verge thing of like realizing we need to go out there and make some contacts. And so I was with a group of people and I sat on the edge at the bar because I was like, well, there might be somebody sitting at the bar I should meet. And oddly, there was. I'm talking to this gentleman, and turns out that he was like a producer on a very successful USA show. And so we struck up a really great conversation. I got his information. And then when we had our quote coming out party for writers on the Verge, his son, who was a producer on that same show, was at Writers on the Verge.
Wow.
And so I was immediately able to say, oh my God, I just met your dad and we had a conversation and I drank your family wines that they sell at Wolfgang's. And,
wow.
and so it was an immediate connection, and it's sort of about trying to find what can that connection be. And it was just about putting myself out there.
Very cool. Well, I think that's an important lesson, because I know there's so many people who go to many of these seminars and conferences and things, and they can feel frustrated because they feel like they're getting out there, and yet taking advantage of the extra step is a huge deal. An example I would give is a number of the people that I've interviewed on the podcast have given their personal email addresses and said, I'd love to personally correspond with anyone who would like, and I'll help you with your career. And I'll hear back from these writers after a while saying, 2 or 3 people did.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
And it's like they're being so gracious and offering their contact information, extending this offer. Mm-hmm. Take advantage of it.
Totally. And also make sure that you're ready to do that. I mean, I like to think maybe there are some people that have that email address tucked away somewhere, but they're not ready with their sort of arsenal of material to go to the next step. Because really, you do have that one chance of asking that writer for help, or that manager or that agent or that producer. And so you want to make sure that your material is ready and up to scratch before you take advantage of those opportunities. I mean, so like it's twofold, because I have a lot of writers who say, I gave my script to so-and-so, and I'm like, it's too early. Like, you just be patient and wait that few more months while you polish it up, because, it's all sort of timing, and the puzzle has to start sort of fitting together. Yeah. So hopefully some people will make contact with those writers who offered.
Yeah. And that is a very, very important point. And you kind of have to know, depending on which contact it is. Like, there are some people that I know that I can contact several times a year. There's others that I know I'm going to contact when I'm ready with something really big.
That's right. Another thing that just came up for me that I thought about when you were saying that is, yes, you have the people that you can contact once a year and some people that you can contact more. But another really great thing to do when you make contact with somebody is to find things to contact them about that are not just asking for help. So one of the things that we try to do is keep in touch with people just about like where we're at, what our progress is, or like, Happy New Year, or Merry Christmas, or Happy Hanukkah, or Happy Birthday, or hey, we have an episode coming up. I know maybe it's not totally up your alley, but DVR it and watch it if you have a chance. They probably won't watch it, but you're just like, you're putting yourself in their mind, and you're not asking them for help, or you're just saying happy birthday, or hey, we got on another show and we're working on this right now and hope you're well. Or congratulations, we just saw you got promoted, or congratulations, we saw you sold this show. And, we sincerely are happy for them. And sometimes we don't take time out to do that. And so Allie and I try to make sure that we take out that time and keep that contact, so that it's not just about going to somebody and saying, do you have a job for me?
Cool. Well, I'm going to rewind just a touch so that I have an opportunity for a segue. And that is, you mentioned that you might have this great person to contact, but your material isn't ready. Well, you do offer consulting services. You launched Script Anatomy, which is scriptanatomy.com, very easy. And it's a company designed to help screen and television writers reach their personal writing goals and elevate their storytelling through private script consultation, group feature, and television writing classes and workshops. So specifically, and again, a topic of conversation, we were speaking before the interview about how there's a book that says that you can be a script consultant even if you've never written anything. So what differentiates Script Anatomy from all the other consultants out there?
I mean, I think the thing that I have to offer is that I have been teaching for a long time, since 2005, and I've studied everything under the sun. But the unique thing that I have to offer is that I am a working writer, and I'm a person who's in the room and who's getting experience and who's going and pitching their material, and I've been where they've been, and then I'm a little bit ahead of where they are, or where they want to get to, and so I feel like I can be the bridge to that by. My whole thing is I like to demystify everything, the writer's room, the process, whatever it is. Like, I like to be very open and share with the information that I have, because I didn't have a lot of mentors. I've had a few, but I didn't have a lot of mentors to tell me like, hey, you should do this, or hey, don't stress out. This is what's going to happen. This is okay. This is normal, or whatever. And so I think that's my experience as a writer who writes and who's working, who's also able to teach and knows how to teach. I can give them hopefully the best of both worlds. Because, I say that this is what I do because I do give them, like, what they're getting is my opinion, whether they're going to some other consultant or myself, they're getting my opinion. And so I come from a writer's POV, and I come from like, how would I fix this story? How would I change it? How would I make it more conceitful? How would I make this character more memorable? So that's sort of what I do.
And something that I find with a lot of consultants is they seem to take you from, you've already written a script, now let's backtrack. But I find as a writer, one of the places I need the most help is in development. And you are a part of a writing team where you can bounce ideas off your writing partner. When you don't have a writing partner, writing can be a really lonely experience, and you can hit roadblocks along the way. What kind of services do you offer for the development process?
Well, if someone's in LA and can take a class of mine, my class is all about developing your project from the ground up. And so I've built sort of a set of tools, and I give assignments every week, and then they do these quote development tools, and then I give them feedback every step of the way through the process. And the goal for them is to be going back through and revising those things before going to the next tool to build upon that. And so it gives them a process that they can sort of start with and not just go like, hey, okay, I have a great idea, I'm going to just jump into a draft and start writing without knowing what direction I'm going in. So I give an applicable process, which was something that was really important to me when I was learning how to write. Like, how do I apply everything that people are saying? And then, so aside from the classes that I do also private packages where I'll take somebody through those same sets of tools that I do in my classes, but maybe they're living in New York or Louisiana, and I take them through the steps that way. And then, of course, I do the consults where it's like, okay, I'm reading your script and giving you notes, and then I go through overall concept, structure, character development, tone, genre, dialogue, scene work, and I give my assessment sort of overall of what's working and not working, and then I give pretty detailed page notes.
And one of the things you mentioned on your website is that you believe that a person's growth as a writer is an ongoing process.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that.
I just think it's never ending. I mean, I think once you stop growing and learning, then you're not becoming a better writer, which there's always another level to get to. And you might have even lost your passion and inspiration at that point if you're not really growing. So I think that's what's exciting about it. And I think it's important to be constantly trying to improve your craft. And that's partly from writing and rewriting, maybe being in a writer's group where you're getting the feedback that you need, from someone else. It's reading a screenwriting book or watching. I always tell my writers, like, watch TV shows, pause, like stop and start it and write the outline for that show yourself. Like just stop, start, write the outline, try to see what you think is happening, where the act breaks are, what kind of act breaks do they act out on something personal? Do they act out on a case? Is it, a big surprise? Is it a reveal? What is it? Like try to figure out what that structure is of that show. And by stopping and starting and writing out the outline yourself and then sort of trying to write it and make it pretty, that's, I think, good experience. And you start to feel it. You start to feel what somebody else is doing. And I think it starts to become more inherent and natural in your own process. Because it's not enough, I don't think, just to watch a TV show or watch a movie for most people, because we're not all Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Who can watch video after video after video and then just get it, which he clearly does. He's amazing.
Yeah. Well, and I do have to ask perhaps a tough question, and I'll frame it in such a way that I do believe it's of tremendous value when a consultant is a working writer and has a track record. I think of all the books that I read on screenwriting, one of the most helpful was Blake Snyder. It just so happens he was a working writer, and he had been through the trenches of developing stories, and so he understood from a writer's perspective how to approach a story. The challenge that I've seen with some consultants who are busy writers, especially in television, is that the television schedule is merciless, and so what happens if somebody's desiring some consulting when you happen to be swamped on a TV series?
Well, this is something that I'm still sort of navigating and trying to find the balancing act for myself, because I did teach quite a bit on client list this year, and it was probably too much for me because I had to like kill myself to get all the notes to them. But I feel like people come to me because I am a working writer and they know that I'm working on a show. They know what my schedule's like. They know that there's going to be unexpected, emergencies or changes or something will happen or you get sick or whatever. So I always say like, I'm going to get your material back to you within 2 to 3 weeks. And then there have been times where it's going to be 2 or 3 more days. And I try to communicate, with them via email and be like, I'm really sorry. It's going to be a few more days or whatever. I always try to do it within the 2 to 3 weeks. But if I'm not going to be able to, then I'll let them know.
Very, very cool. Yeah. Communication, very, very important.
It's important.
I know I know a particular consultant who's, has yet to respond to an email that I sent a few weeks ago.
I mean, Jen Grisanti, who learned this from somebody else, and I can't remember who she said, was like, I always try to return emails within 24 hours. When I'm on hiatus, I try to return emails within 24 hours. During the season, I try to do that too, but it's not always possible. So it might be 2 or 3 days, which is unfortunate because I think the 24-hour rule is really good. But yeah, I think 2 weeks is a long time to not hear back.
Yeah. Oh, Jen is amazing. I mean,
she's amazing. I don't know how she does it.
She is crazy busy, and yet she is so prompt with responding to emails.
I don't think she sleeps a lot. I found
I know. I'll get emails from her that are like 4 a.m.
Yeah. No, I've asked her. I think I've asked her before, like, what's your schedule? I've asked her because I'm like, but I just don't have that within me, I don't think. But like the showrunner that I work with is also one of those that doesn't get any sleep, like goes to bed really late, gets up really early, and you get emails at all hours. And I admire that because I wish that I could be a person who could live on 5 hours because you get so much more done. And I think Jen's one of those people.
Yeah. Well, we are running a bit long, but I did want to ask just a couple of practical questions. And specifically because this is a TV writing podcast. What do you see as the biggest mistakes? And when I say mistakes, I mean mistakes in scripts and also mistakes in careers as people are trying to break in.
Boy, mistakes in scripts, I would think it starts out with the concept, because sometimes you can see somebody, they'll be like a talented writer who has a gift, who has a voice, who has skills. And you're like, this is really good writing. Maybe it's even great writing, but it's not a show. You know, it's not a show. I think it's hard for anybody at any level to come up with something that's really a show that has legs, you know, that you can actually see 100 episodes that come out of that concept. So I think starting with just the concept, if you don't have a strong, great concept, it makes your life more difficult as a newer writer trying to break in to get a job off of that script, or obviously to sell it. So it starts at a really basic place, I think. That'd be one of the biggest mistakes, I would say. And the other thing is passive characters, especially a main character, like just not having an active main character who is flawed and interesting and complex, who's going after a strong goal. And, you know, oh my God, it's like there's so many things that come into it. Because then I'm like, but not enough conflict. So it's like you have to have a character with a complex character with a flaw, who has a backstory that's really interesting and who has a really strong goal. And then as they pursue that goal, there needs to be strong conflict and obstacles coming from a strong opponent. So it's like, you know, there's so many elements. I mean, I don't even know where to begin. But I would say on a basic level, if you have a weak concept, even if you're a great writer, it's like, it's just not going to have any heat under it. And then career-wise, I don't know that I'm like knowledgeable or experienced enough to say this, but I feel like just looking at some of the people that I know, I would say two things. I'd say, one, if you really want to write, you know, a sci-fi show, or if you really want to write something dark, which I would say for ourselves too, for Ali and I, make sure you have the material that supports that. So we were one season, we were like, we want to be on this and this, and we want to go out for this and that and the other. And they were like, but you don't have the material to support that. You will have to have something darker and edgier and grittier that shows that you can do that, if that's the kind of show you want to write on.
Right.
So that's a mistake, just not like sort of trying to tailor your career that way. And another thing would be, I think when you're starting out, it's just important to get the job and be on the job and do the best job you can. And then I think there's probably, and I'm not sure, but there's probably a certain point where you have to start thinking about the kind of show you want to be on and the kind of writer you've become. So it's like, if you've been on like a soft soap opera for 8 years, you know, and you really want to be on Breaking Bad or the next Breaking Bad, since that's going to be over, then you really have to like, not only make sure your material is targeting that, but you can't accept that third soap opera. Now, that's easier said than done. You know what I mean? But it's like, it's something that that I think about. I think like Ali and I have been on 2 really great shows that we love and are amazing. And I think we're happy with where we're at for now. But like when you say, oh, down the road, where do you want to be? It's like, okay, well, there's got to be a certain point when we're going to have to think about that, but I don't know how much control we're going to have over it. I really don't. I admire the writers that are like, their first job's on Mad Men. It's like, oh, lucky you. You know, if that's what you want to be on, or if you want to be on a Disney family show, then stop writing Dexter Specs or whatever. Yeah.
And in contrast, what as you have taught for many years, and you've consulted with and taught classes and that kind of thing, what makes a writer stand out?
Well, a unique voice for sure. That's coming through. But I mean, the writers that stand out to me when I'm working with them, it's always like, oh my God, there's writers that are, you know, newer or haven't broken in yet, and they have like a really strong, amazing concept that you're like, I can't believe I didn't think about that, or I can't believe that nobody else has done that either. Like that stands out. And then hopefully, and oftentimes I find those people actually have some chops and they have a really good script. But the ones that really stand out for me are the ones that are strong with theme, so that everything really ties together thematically, and it has sort of an emotional impact on you when you read it. So there's like more than one theme often. There's several threads of the theme or one core theme, and it's being expressed in the A, B, C, and so on storyline. Like that's tight writing, I think. You know, it's unified and it has an impact.
Well, and that reminds me of, I'm sure you remember an amazing blog by Terry Rossio and Ted Elliott, wordplayer.com. It's still live. I urge, if you haven't, if somebody's watching this and they haven't seen wordplayer.com, just crazy articles, very insightful. And one of them they wrote was about Shrek, how they came up with the characters for Shrek. And it was fascinating how, I mean, it's ostensibly a kid's movie. I mean, I know like all ages enjoyed it, but they built all of the characters very specifically to show different aspects of self-image. And and it was just fascinating because Shrek, it did do amazingly well. And when you watch it, you don't necessarily think of that. But the theme was incredibly important to how every single part of it was built. Yes.
I mean, that's storytelling. And that's why that's how you execute or illustrate the emotional arc of your story, by showing facets of theme through every character. They can either prove it or disprove it in some way. They can embody the theme or they can be the antithesis of the theme. So yeah, I just to be a total geek and expose that about myself. When I was first starting to write, I would get on that blog, Wordplayer, and I used to print out all of them and then highlight them. And I was trying to learn feature writing early on before I started studying it. That was one of the first places I went to figure it out.
Yeah. Oh, and there's stuff on that blog that you won't find anywhere else. Like just the insights that they had. Yeah. Even the insights on Hollywood, like mind share of a person or a property. And anyway, go to wordplayer.com.
Cool. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, very cool stuff. Well, we do have to wrap it up, but this has been really great. And I do urge people to go to scriptanatomy.com, and also you're on Twitter.
I'm so bad at, as you already know, because I was sort of not very good at setting this whole, figuring out how to do Skype. It's Script Anatomy. It's I guess it's
Script Anatomy.
At Script Anatomy. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
So well, thank you for taking this time. I know that you've just come off of a really busy show, and so I appreciate you taking time out of your time off to do this.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
Very cool. Well, best of luck to you, and hopefully we'll chat soon.
Okay, good.
Okay, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Hosted by Gray Jones, the TV Writer Podcast is brought to you by Script Magazine and scriptmag.com, the leading source for script writing information in print and on the web.